Okay, so we're going to talk about muzzle conditioning and muzzle training today. I have my helper dog, Stella, who you'll see here momentarily. She's just taking a brief break. But we want to be able to have our dogs be comfortable with the muzzle. Most of the time, we're using a muzzle for safety reasons, whether that be we need to touch our dogs or we need to get them comfortable around public situations, and we need an added extra layer of safety. But the last thing we want to do is force our dogs to wear a muzzle for the first time and increase their stress level in an already stressful situation or environment. So our first job is to get our dogs comfortable with approaching the muzzle, then growing into actually holding their face into the muzzle, then eventually getting comfortable with the straps going around their head, and then clipping the muzzle, and then also showing them when the muzzle will come off. So all of these things tend to be stationary at first. Then we will grow our dog's confidence with movement, and that's a whole other category of training for them. So surprise, surprise, muzzle conditioning seems super easy, and in some ways it is, but there are multiple steps for us to work through before our dogs are ready to actually move and wear the muzzle. The last little piece of information I'm going to suggest here is once your dog is comfortable wearing the muzzle, start using the muzzle as an everyday tool. You know, go for your walks with it. Have your dog practice holding place with their muzzle. Have them on occasion, you know, go to your vet. Maybe if you're going to use the muzzle at the vet, have them wear the muzzle to the vet on the car ride there. Have them practice being in the vet exam room or in the waiting room with their muzzle on. But basically what I'm saying is get them comfortable with the tool in all types of contexts. So that way they don't start creating an association of every time the muzzle comes out, I'm going to be touched. Every time the muzzle comes out, I have to engage with people. Every time the muzzle comes out, I have to engage with dogs. We don't want the muzzle to predict conflict. We want the muzzle to be very neutral. So if you're working with us, we have probably recommended a Baskerville muzzle for you. This is a Baskerville muzzle size 5. It fits Stella fairly nicely. You'll notice that we have a hole down here and we have a hole up here. This is so that way your dog can drink water and take food. This is for their nose to poke out. There's normally a strap here that is a center strap that does provide a little bit more stability. Most of our dogs aren't going to need that. So if we don't need that center strap, I highly recommend removing it. If you do feel that you will need that center strap, I would still recommend removing it at first, getting your dog comfortable with just this as it were, and then adding the strap back in. But there's lots of ways that we can do this. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Really quick, there are 2 types of muzzles too, even with Baskerville. There's this clip. This is most likely what you have. This is the newer style, and it has a lock to it. Sometimes that lock can get frustrating. It'll slip and slide, and you're trying to get it off, and it'll obviously keep your muzzle locked. But there's a lot of great reasons to have a safety lock on there, so that way they don't accidentally bump up against something while they're on their walk or training or working with you, and it doesn't just pop off, okay? So this is your clasp clip for your muzzle. They have another one that's more of a belt buckle style. So it's a metal buckle. It's the older type, and they do still exist out there. Both are just fine as far as the quality of muzzle. It's just slightly different as to how you're going to put them on and off. But the concept is still the same, okay? The other thing you'll notice is there's this bottom strap here. So let me put this back together again. There's a bottom strap here. This can actually be fed through, oh, here we go. This can actually be fed through your dog's collar. So if they were wearing it like this, we could thread it through their collar. And again, it would add an added level of security and safety. We also find that this tends to agitate the dogs a little bit more. And when we do our due diligence as far as the counter conditioning and conditioning to muzzle in general, we generally aren't going to need that component either. The other thing I like to remind people is, especially at the beginning, if we use these added safeties with the strap in the center and this to the collar, and your dog decides to kind of fight at the muzzle or start to kind of scratch at it or tap it or try to push it off their face, and those extra safeties are on there, it's going to be very difficult for you to try to get those feet and paws out of there, so we can have ripped toenails and other injuries. So again, I tend to not use those extra features, but at a minimum, we're just going to talk about actually conditioning your dog to the muzzle and getting them comfortable as just with it sitting on their face and being strapped around the back of the neck. So the first thing we needed to do is teach our dogs how to put their face into the muzzle, right? It's always better when our dogs are convinced that it's their idea and they actually want to go into the muzzle. I don't want to have to shove this on them and then they already feel trapped and they feel kind of initiate that fight or flight response. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use my hand to cup some food here. She's going to put her nose into my muzzle, and the moment she puts her nose into my muzzle, I'm going to give her the YES marker word. That is our success marker word, and her cue to understand that we are done with the exercise. In the beginning, the exercise is Stella putting her nose and face into the muzzle, me saying yes, and removing my hands so that way she can get the food outside of the muzzle. Okay, so we'll grow on that as we get further in. I do highly recommend using their daily intake of kibble. She's super excited for it. And I use a handful at a time. So if you're feeding a cup of food, you can get a couple of nice handfuls with this, okay? So I've got my food, I've got my food cupped in there. She's ready to roll. Yes. It's okay if they get a little bit of food while they're in the muzzle. It's just going to motivate her more to put her face in the muzzle. Yes. Good. Yes. So really what you're looking for is that quick response, that once you present the muzzle, yes, she puts her face into the muzzle, or your dog puts their face into the muzzle. So let's talk about starting to increase duration with your dog's face in the muzzle. You may need a slightly bigger handful of food, but we're going to use our good marker. So our good marker means I like what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. That's basically going to hold that duration. So while she's in here, I'm going to allow her to eat some pieces of food. Before the food is all done, I'm going to give the YES, the release, and I'm going to finish feeding her outside of the muzzle. You can see how much she really loves to work this one. Good, good. Yes. Good job. So as I'm saying good, she is actively eating in the muzzle. When I say YES, you notice I move my hand. She also removes her face from the muzzle and she eats the rest of the food. Good, good, good. Yes. And if we get a little fallen pieces of kibble, no big deal. As long as your dog's not a resource guarder. And if they are, good, good, good. Yes. Please contact us for more information because we might need to adjust how we work this with your dog. So once your dog is really good at this, you can start to name it. Muzzle. Good, good. Yes. Oh my goodness. Good job. Did we lose more? Come here. Sit. Good girl. So now that I have a dog that's willingly putting her face in there, she's willingly holding her face in there as well, then I can start to play with the actual straps. So I'm going to pull all of these straps forward as I had it pushed back. Nope. You don't want your dog getting too pushy with you. It's very disrespectful. but you do want to pull this stuff back when you're practicing and then when you're ready for the straps to start to come out. What I do is I generally make these straps a lot bigger so that way it's really easy for me to connect around the back of the head. We're not going to connect them quite yet, but what I'm going to do is start practicing moving the strap, right? So she's going to have that good marker while she's eating in the muzzle, and I'm moving the straps, and then the YES before all of the food is gone. Good, good. Yes. So wherever your dog is at with it, some dogs get really nervous the moment you grab the strap. Some dogs are fine with you going all the way around them. Have a kibble underneath me. Sit. Good girl. You're going to know because your dog is going to tell you, right? They're going to tell you in the sense that they're going to get distracted or they're going to get a little nervous or whatever. Their behavior is sit. They will definitely show you what's going on. Good girl. So we're going to show this again. Good, good, good. Yes. And then we feed out. So again, once your dog is very comfortable with you doing this and they're not worried about where your hands are, then you can move on to the next step, which is actually clasping. So for that, I would go ahead and have that kibble for her to, get distracted. Use your good marker. Once that kibble's gone, you're going to transfer your right hand and your left hand together to click your ends together. Good, good, good. Just like this, we're going to click. Woo. And it's always fun when your hands are slobbery. Yes. And then quick release and she can eat kibble. So again, stealth, muzzle. Good, good, good. Yes. It's another good reason for having your muzzle length be longer so that way you don't fumble around as much. So again, muzzle. Good, good, good. And then once your dog is comfortable with you clasping, good. Nope, sit. Good. So you can feed them by stabilizing the muzzle with your left hand and making sure that you're getting that food in that bottom opening portion. Good. And she's doing nicely, so I can kind of do this a couple of times. Good. And feed her while wearing the muzzle, and then, yes. And take it off. Good girl. So once we have a dog that's really comfortable with wearing the muzzle and being stationary with it, and she's not pawing at it or, there's no issues there, we can get the muzzle on. And we can work on moving with our dogs while they're wearing the muzzle. I'm actually going to pause the video. I'm going to reset so that way you can see us at a different angle, and I'll walk you through how to get your dog comfortable with walking with the muzzle on. All right. My dog is comfortable with all of those previous pieces of getting the muzzle on, them putting their face in the muzzle, them holding their face in the muzzle, the straps going around. And again, this was a very quickly progressive video for you and tutorial. So take the time you need to at home with this. If you're stuck with step one for a couple days, that's okay. You're not stuck. You are just helping your dog get through it. Plus, there are things on our end that we need to be able to clean up as far as handling goes, okay? So once you're to this point where your dog is very comfortable with being stationary with the muzzle, they're not pawing at it, then we can go for a walk with it. Let's go. And we're just gonna practice walking around indoors even, right? So you can just do this inside of your home. If you have a hallway, you can do this in the backyard, then graduate to the front yard where maybe things are a little busier. Maybe you need maybe you can use a garage, or again, just kind of a quiet area. But what you're not probably going to see a lot from Stella here is her pawing at her muzzle. What you will probably see with your dog is your dog will be pawing at the muzzle. So let's talk about that. What do you do when your dog starts to paw at the muzzle? When they start to paw, I want you to use your leash pressure up, away from the ground. So I want leash pressure up, trying to help them understand they need to stop. If they don't stop, you're going to use a little leash pressure up and remove the hand or the paw that's pawing at the muzzle. Try to also keep them moving. So every dog's a little different. Some dogs are going to do better with stopping and waiting and using a little leash pressure to stop them from panicking, and then giving them a minute before continuing with movement. Some dogs are going to do better with movement. It's up to you to know your dog, right? So we understand our dogs. We live with them in and out every day. And you can just watch by their behavior. If stopping and using leash pressure makes them panic more, then try moving, right? And so that would be like, let's go. That'd be like if she's pawing at her muzzle, then I would just use leash pressure like this, upward, being let's go, let's go, let's go. Good girl, good girl. She's a little confused. She's like, what is happening? I'm not doing nothing. I'm not doing nothing. It's worth it. So either way, get your dog very comfortable with just existing in the muzzle before adding movement. Some dogs are going to struggle with movement more so than being stationary. And again, some dogs are going to be having a struggle being stationary over movement. Either way, get your dog very comfortable with their muzzle. Once you're at this stage, you can start going on walks with it. You can have them decompress with it. You can continue utilizing the muzzle for all types of situations. Again, so that way it becomes a neutral, beneficial tool and a safety for you and public and your vet or your groomer. And it doesn't become a sign of stress to your dog. Okay, hope this helps.